Imagine discovering that every breath you take, every step you place on this planet was never meant for you. That Earth, its gravity, its chemistry, its rhythms, was not designed with humans in mind at all. That we are not the final chapter of this world's story, but a strange footnote, tolerated perhaps, but never intended. And once you see the evidence, it becomes very hard to unsee.
The first clue is subtle, so subtle that most people never notice it because it feels normal. You wake up tired, your back aches without injury, your eyes squint against sunlight that should, in theory, sustain life, but instead burns your skin, damages your DNA, and ages you cell by cell. From the moment you open your eyes, your body begins negotiating with the planet. No other dominant species does this. A deer does not wake up fighting gravity. A bird does not need to shield its eyes from the sky it evolved beneath. A shark does not require artificial structures to survive the ocean. Yet humans, arguably the most intelligent species to ever exist, cannot comfortably exist anywhere on Earth without altering the environment first. Shade, clothing, shelter, fire, medicine. We do not simply arrive in a place and live. We modify, protect, insulate. Even in regions we call habitable, survival without tools is brutally short. Exposure kills within hours. Contaminated water overwhelms us. Microscopic organisms, older than trees, older than bones, can dismantle our bodies with terrifying efficiency. The planet is alive, yes, but it is not gentle, and it is strangely indifferent to us. This has always been the case. When early humans left Africa tens of thousands of years ago, they did not spread into a welcoming world. They walked into cold that stiffened joints and froze tissue, into deserts that punished thirst within days, into forests thick with predators that had evolved perfectly for those environments. Humans survived not because Earth embraced them, but because they resisted it. They learned to fight the planet on its own terms, and that resistance became our defining trait.
Consider gravity. Earth's gravity is just strong enough to hold oceans, atmosphere, and life itself, but it slowly destroys the human body. Our spines compress, our knees degrade, our hips fail. Childbirth becomes dangerous precisely because of upright posture combined with skull size. Evolution did not refine this contradiction. It tolerated it, as if time ran out before the design was finished. Look at our skin. Too thin to resist sunlight, too sensitive to cold, too permeable to toxins. Melanin offers protection, but not immunity. Long exposure leads to cancer, something no species meant for its environment should face as a direct consequence of the sun. The very star that fuels Earth's biosphere quietly harms us every day. Even our breathing is a compromise. Oxygen sustains us, yet oxidizes us from the inside, slowly corroding cells in a process indistinguishable from controlled decay. We age because we breathe. Earth's atmosphere is not hostile, but it is not optimized for longevity either. Now compare this to other species. Reptiles bask in sunlight without consequence. Birds align perfectly with air density and pressure. Insects thrive in oxygen concentrations that would poison us. Microorganisms flourish in volcanic vents, radioactive waste, frozen tundra, places utterly lethal to humans. Life clearly is not fragile here. We are. And that fragility is not evenly distributed across the planet. Humans flourish in narrow temperature bands, specific humidity ranges, limited altitudes. Too high and oxygen thins beyond comfort. Too low and heat overwhelms thermoregulation. We cannot live underwater, cannot fly, cannot hibernate, cannot regenerate lost limbs. Our survival window is narrow, and it is shrinking. This raises a quiet but unsettling historical question. Why is the species that dominates Earth the least naturally suited to it?
Ancient humans sensed this, even if they lacked the language to describe it. Early myths rarely depict Earth as a gift. More often, it is a trial, a place of exile, a testing ground. The land must be tamed, the wilderness conquered, the chaos subdued. These stories did not emerge from comfort, they emerged from tension. Archaeology supports that tension. Early human settlements cluster around rivers, not because Earth offered abundance freely, but because without constant access to water, death came swiftly. Food scarcity shaped migrations. Climate shifts erased entire cultures. When ice advanced or rains failed, humans did not adapt gracefully. They collapsed. The archaeological record is littered with abandoned cities, half-built walls, and mass graves aligned with environmental stress. Earth does not bend easily for us. Even today, with all our technology, this remains true. Heat waves kill by the thousands. Cold snaps overwhelm infrastructure. A single volcanic eruption can darken skies across continents. A virus, microscopic, ancient, indifferent, can halt global civilization in weeks. These are not anomalies. They are reminders. The planet is not calibrated for human stability. We are told that humans are perfectly evolved for Earth, but evolution does not produce perfection. It produces good enough to survive for now, and sometimes not even that. The human body is a collection of historical solutions stacked on top of one another, many of them outdated, many of them fragile. A jaw that shrank faster than teeth, a brain that consumes enormous energy but struggles with anxiety and fear, a digestive system that rebels against abundance. It feels less like careful design and more like improvisation.
And improvisation suggests urgency. If humans were truly meant for this planet, comfort would be the default, not the reward for constant effort. Survival would not require architecture, agriculture, medicine, and social systems so complex they collapse under their own weight. A species meant for its world does not need to dominate it to live. Yet domination is our only path. We clear forests not because we hate them, but because they overwhelm us. We drain swamps because disease thrives there. We build walls against oceans because they will reclaim our cities without hesitation. Civilization itself is not proof of harmony, it is evidence of resistance. Earth remains slightly out of reach, close enough to sustain us, far enough to exhaust us. And perhaps that distance is the point, because when you step back far enough, past daily life, past modern assumptions, you begin to notice something deeply strange. For billions of years, Earth thrived without humans. Atmospheres stabilized, ecosystems balanced, life diversified and endured cataclysms far greater than anything we have faced. Then humans arrived, and almost immediately the balance shifted. Not because we are evil, not because we are careless, but because we do not fit cleanly into the system. We consume too much. We alter too quickly. We struggle to exist without reshaping everything around us. That is not how native species behave, which leads to an uncomfortable thought, one that grows harder to dismiss the longer you sit with it. What if the reason Earth feels slightly hostile is not because it is broken, but because we are not part of its original plan? What if we are not the natural heirs of this planet, but latecomers, adapting as fast as...
That question lingers unresolved as the camera pulls closer away from landscapes and climates and toward the human body itself. Because if Earth truly wasn't meant for us, the evidence wouldn't just be written in mountains and storms. It would be written in our bones. If the planet feels slightly out of reach, the human body tells a more intimate story, one written not in landscapes, but in pain, limitation, and quiet biological compromise. Because when you strip away clothing, medicine, shelter, and technology, what remains is not a creature finely tuned to its world, but one constantly correcting itself just to function. Stand upright for a moment and feel it, the subtle tension in the lower back, the pressure in the knees, the unconscious shifting of weight to stay balanced. Humans are one of the very few species that walk fully upright, and we pay for it every day. Our spines were not originally designed for this posture. They evolved for quadrupedal movement, then hastily curved into an S shape to support vertical walking. The result is elegant in theory and disastrous in practice. Herniated discs, chronic back pain, sciatic nerve compression, these are not modern problems. Fossilized vertebrae show the same stress markers tens of thousands of years ago. Early humans lived short lives not only because of predators or disease, but because their own skeletons failed them. A body meant for a planet should not collapse under its own posture. Then there is childbirth. The human pelvis narrowed as we stood upright, while the human skull expanded to house a growing brain. Evolution solved this contradiction not by redesigning the body, but by accepting danger. Human childbirth is uniquely lethal among mammals. Without assistance, mortality rates were staggering. Labor is long, painful, and unpredictable. A single misalignment can mean death for mother, child, or both.
This is not refinement. It is compromise. Our teeth tell a similar story. Human jaws have shrunk rapidly in evolutionary terms, yet our teeth have not kept pace. Wisdom teeth crowd, rot, and require surgical removal, an absurdity in nature. No other species routinely grows organs that must be cut out to survive comfortably. Tooth decay, gum disease, infection, these are not rare conditions. They are default outcomes in a world of abundance our bodies were never prepared for. Even our eyes betray us. We struggle in low light, yet bright sunlight damages our retinas. Our color vision is limited compared to birds. Our night vision is laughable next to nocturnal mammals. We compensate with artificial lighting, lenses, screens. The world is always either too dim or too bright. Focus fades with age. Vision blurs. The planet does not meet us halfway. And then there is skin, the boundary between us and everything else. Human skin is remarkably vulnerable. It tears easily. It burns under ultraviolet radiation. It offers limited protection against cold, parasites, and toxins. We are born nearly hairless, unlike most mammals, requiring external insulation to survive temperature swings. Even in warm climates, prolonged exposure leads to dehydration, sun damage, and infection. The sun is often described as life-giving. For humans, it is also carcinogenic. Skin cancer is not a failure of behavior. It is a biological inevitability in a species whose protective barriers are insufficient for its environment. Melanin mitigates risk, but does not eliminate it. The star that sustains Earth's biosphere quietly shortens our lives. Inside, the story does not improve. Our immune system is powerful, yet prone to confusion. Allergies, autoimmune diseases, inflammatory disorders, cases where the body attacks itself because it cannot distinguish threat from normality. These conditions are widespread, increasing, and poorly understood. A body at home in its environment does not wage war against itself so frequently. Our digestive system, too, struggles. Lactose intolerance is the global norm, not the exception. Gluten sensitivity affects millions. Excess sugar overwhelms metabolic pathways, leading to diabetes, obesity, cardiovascular disease. We evolved in scarcity, yet now live in abundance, and our bodies respond as if abundance itself is a threat. This mismatch is not subtle. Look at sleep. Humans require long, uninterrupted periods of unconsciousness to function, an evolutionary liability. Most animals can sleep in short bursts, alert to danger. Humans must fully disengage, leaving themselves vulnerable. Sleep deprivation rapidly degrades cognition, emotional stability, and physical health. A single night without rest can impair judgment. Extended deprivation can kill. Why would a dominant species be designed to spend a third of its life defenseless? Even our brains, often celebrated as our greatest strength, carry deep costs. The human brain consumes enormous energy, about 20% of our total intake, yet struggles with anxiety, depression, fear, and obsession. We are the only species that routinely imagines futures that do not exist and then suffers because of them. Stress-related illness is not incidental, it is structural. Our minds are rarely at peace. Other animals respond to immediate stimuli. Humans replay the past, fear the future, and wrestle with meaning itself. This constant cognitive overreach extracts a physiological toll. Elevated cortisol damages organs. Chronic stress weakens immunity. Mental health disorders emerge from brains that evolved for a world far simpler than the one we inhabit. And that world, Earth, does not slow down to accommodate us. We are susceptible to altitude sickness, pressure changes, temperature extremes. We cannot regenerate limbs. We heal slowly. Infection exploits us with ease. A small wound can become fatal without intervention. The natural world is filled with dangers our bodies cannot handle unaided, which raises a haunting evolutionary question. If humans were shaped entirely by Earth systems over millions of years, why do we remain so biologically unfinished? Evolution typically smooths rough edges over time. Traits that cause widespread failure are eliminated. Yet human biology is full of known flaws that persist generation after generation. They are not being corrected. They are being managed with tools, with culture, with medicine. It is as if biological evolution stalled and technological evolution took over instead. This transition is often framed as triumph, but it can also be read as necessity. When the body could no longer adapt fast enough, the mind built external solutions. Clothing replaced fur. Shelters replaced natural insulation. Fire replaced internal temperature regulation. Agriculture replaced digestive efficiency. Medicine replaced resilience. We outsourced survival. And outsourcing suggests a problem that could not be solved internally. Look at the fossil record. Human anatomy changed rapidly in a short window. Bipedalism, brain expansion, reduced body hair, then stabilized. Since then, most improvement has been cultural, not biological. Our bodies remain vulnerable while our tools grow ever more complex. It is an unusual pattern. Other species continue to physically adapt to their environments. Humans adapt the environment to themselves. That strategy works until it doesn't, because tools can fail, systems can collapse, and when they do, the raw biology is exposed, and raw biology struggles. This is not an argument against evolution. It is an argument against inevitability. Humans are not the obvious endpoint of Earth's biological experiment. We are an anomaly, brilliant, fragile, cognitively overwhelming, physically underprepared. A species whose mind outpaced its body. Or perhaps a species whose body arrived somewhere it was never fully meant to be. As these contradictions pile up, spine, skin, immune system, mind, a pattern emerges. Not of incompetence, but of displacement. Like a machine running slightly off spec. Functional, impressive, but always overheating. Always compensating. Always needing help. And when you step back far enough, another thought takes shape. Quiet, persistent, difficult to ignore. Maybe the discomfort we feel in our bodies is not a flaw to be solved, but a signal to be understood. Because if Earth was never meant for humans, the evidence would not scream. It would whisper, through aching joints, through restless minds, through bodies that work, but never quite effortlessly. And as unsettling as that realization is, it opens a larger, more dangerous question. If our bodies don't quite belong here, what happens when we try to stay anyway? The answer is written not in anatomy, but in history, etched into collapsed civilizations, failed settlements, and landscapes that pushed back with quiet force. And that story begins when humans stop adapting themselves and start forcing the planet to
adapt instead. The moment humans began to settle, the planet began to answer back. Not with intention, not with malice, but with a kind of ancient indifference that feels almost personal when it erases everything you have built. The earliest cities rose where Earth briefly allowed them to, along rivers that flooded predictably until they didn't, on plains fertile enough to feed thousands until the soil collapsed into dust. Civilization did not bloom because Earth welcomed it. It bloomed because, for a moment, the conditions aligned, and when they shifted, even slightly, entire worlds ended. Mesopotamia is often called the cradle of civilization. Between the Tigris and Euphrates, humans learned agriculture, writing, law, but the same rivers that nourished those cities also poisoned them. Irrigation slowly salinized the soil, turning farmland barren. Crops failed. Cities shrank. The planet did not adapt to human ambition. Human ambition ran headlong into geological reality. Far to the east, the Indus Valley tells a similar story. Meticulously planned cities, advanced drainage systems, standardized bricks. A civilization that looked, in many ways, astonishingly modern. And then silence. No evidence of invasion. No dramatic collapse. Just climate shifts. Altered monsoons, rivers changing course. The land that once sustained life simply withdrew its cooperation. Earth did not need war to defeat these societies. It needed patience. The Maya carved cities out of dense jungle, aligning temples with stars, mastering mathematics and astronomy. Their downfall was not ignorance, it was water. Extended droughts, deforestation, soil erosion. As rainfall patterns shifted, reservoirs emptied, crops failed, political order fractured, civilization unraveled. The jungle reclaimed what humans could no longer defend. This pattern repeats with unsettling consistency. The Norse settlers of Greenland arrived with confidence. They brought European farming practices, livestock, and architecture to a land that tolerated them for a time. As temperatures dropped during the Little Ice Age, grasslands shrank, crops failed, livestock starved. The Inuit adapted by changing diets, tools, and mobility. The Norse did not. They clung to familiar methods, and the planet closed the door. Earth does not negotiate for long. Even when humans attempt to impose permanence, the planet reminds them how temporary they are. Volcanoes bury cities under ash, preserving them like warnings frozen in time. Pompeii was not destroyed because its people were careless. It was destroyed because they lived near a mountain older than their language. Earth's timelines do not align with human planning. Earthquakes fracture centuries of construction in seconds. Coastlines shift. Rivers carve new paths. Deserts expand. Ice advances. None of this is extraordinary in geological terms. What is extraordinary is that humans expect stability in a system defined by change. We build as if the ground beneath us has made a promise. It has not. Even the climate, often spoken of as if it were a static backdrop, is a restless system. Ice ages come and go. Sea levels rise and fall by hundreds of feet. Entire continents change shape. For most of Earth's history, humans would not have survived a single season. Our presence coincides with a narrow climatic window, one that is already closing. This is not coincidence, it is contingency. When disasters strike, they expose something deeper than vulnerability. They reveal how thin the margin really is. Modern cities rely on supply chains stretching across continents. Electricity grids balanced to the second. Water systems calibrated precisely. When a hurricane, flood, or heat wave disrupts that balance, the illusion of control dissolves almost instantly. Civilization feels sturdy until it isn't. And Earth does not rush to fix what breaks. Consider floods. Rivers overflow not because they are malicious, but because water follows physics, not human boundaries. Floodplains were never meant to be occupied permanently. We built there anyway. When the water returns, we call it disaster. From Earth's perspective, it is routine. Wildfires behave the same way. Fire is not an enemy of ecosystems. It is a regulator. But humans suppress it, fragment forests, and then watch as accumulated fuel transforms routine burns into infernos. We blame the fire. The planet simply continues its cycles. Even disease follows this logic. Pathogens evolve constantly, indifferent to borders or economies. A virus does not target humans, it exploits opportunity. Dense populations, global travel, weakened immune systems. When pandemics spread, they reveal how fragile human dominance really is. An invisible organism can halt economies, overwhelm hospitals, and isolate billions. Earth does not shield us from its smallest inhabitants. And there is something else, something quieter, but more unsettling. Earth does not just resist us in moments of catastrophe. It resists us in slow, grinding ways. Soil depletion, desertification, ocean acidification, species loss. These are not sudden events. They are drawn-out reminders that the planet has limits, and those limits are not negotiable. When humans push beyond them, the response is not dramatic. It is cumulative. The land grows less productive. The seas grow less generous. The air grows heavier. These changes do not feel like rejection. They feel like indifference. As if Earth is simply continuing its processes, unconcerned with who depends on them. History shows that humans rarely notice until it is too late. Civilizations do not collapse all at once. They fray. Food becomes scarce. Conflicts intensify. Trust erodes. Migration increases. Then, one day, the systems that once seemed eternal are simply gone. Archaeologists arrive centuries later, puzzled by how something so advanced could vanish. The answer is always the same. The planet stopped cooperating. Not because it chose to, but because it never promised to. This realization reframes human history. It is not a story of steady progress across a stable world. It is a series of narrow escapes through an unstable one. Every civilization is a temporary alignment between human ingenuity and planetary tolerance. And tolerance is not permanence. This is why humans have always feared nature not as superstition, but as intuition. Storm gods, earth spirits, flood myths. These were not primitive misunderstandings. They were early attempts to personify a force that could not be reasoned with, a way to cope with a planet that gives and takes without explanation. Modern science removed the gods, but not the fear. Because even now, with satellites and sensors, we cannot command the systems that sustain us. We can model them, influence them, disrupt them, but we cannot control them. And the more we reshape Earth to suit ourselves, the more resistance we seem to encounter. Not retaliation, reaction. Push the atmosphere, and it shifts. Push the oceans, and they respond. Push the land, and it degrades. Earth does not fight back. It simply adjusts. And adjustment is deadly to a species that depends on stability. As this pattern emerges across millennia, rise, expansion, resistance, collapse, it becomes harder to see human dominance as natural. It begins to look conditional, temporary, like a lease with terms we never read, which leads to a deeper, more unsettling perspective. Perhaps Earth has always resisted us, not because we are destructive, but because we are incompatible at scale. Small bands of humans could move, adapt, and disappear without leaving scars. Large civilizations cannot. They demand predictability from a planet that has never offered it. And that demand may be the real anomaly. Because for most of Earth's history, no single species ever tried to freeze the world in place. No organism ever insisted the climate remain stable, the rivers obedient, the land permanently productive. Until us. Which raises the next question, one that stretches beyond history into deep time. If Earth resists humans so consistently, so predictably, so patiently, what was it doing for the billions of years before we arrived? And, more importantly, how well was it doing without us? To understand how Earth treats humans, you have to step outside human time. Not decades, not centuries, but millions, then billions of years, until the span of recorded history shrinks into something barely visible. From that distance, humanity does not look ancient or inevitable. It looks abrupt, almost intrusive. For nearly 4 billion years, Earth refined itself without us. Life emerged, failed, re-emerged. Atmospheres transformed, oceans formed and vanished. Continents drifted like slow thoughts across the planet's surface. All of it happened without intention, yet with extraordinary efficiency. By the time humans appeared, Earth was not experimenting anymore. It was mature. The first life was microbial, simple, relentless, nearly immortal. These organisms reshaped the planet more profoundly than any species since. They filled the atmosphere with oxygen, triggering the Great Oxidation Event, an extinction so massive it wiped out most existing life. And yet, life recovered. New systems formed, stability returned. Earth learned how to endure. For hundreds of millions of years, multicellular life diversified. Forests rose, insects conquered the air, fish filled the seas, reptiles claimed the land. Dinosaurs dominated for over 160 million years, longer than humans have existed by an order of magnitude. They were not primitive. They were optimized. When the asteroid struck, it did not end life. It changed its direction. Mammals, once marginal, expanded into newly opened niches. They adapted slowly, methodically, guided by pressures that rewarded efficiency, not dominance. Primates appeared late in this story. Hominins appeared later still. Anatomically modern humans arrived less than 300,000 years ago. In geological terms, we are barely here. If Earth's history were compressed into a single year, humans would appear in the final minutes of December 31st. Civilization would emerge in the last few seconds. Everything we consider foundational language, culture, agriculture, technology would be a flicker before midnight. And yet, in that flicker, we have altered planetary systems that endured for millions of years. This is not because we are uniquely powerful. It is because we arrived at the wrong time, or perhaps after the story was already written. Earth's ecosystems evolved in balance long before humans entered the scene. Predators and prey co-evolved. Feedback loops stabilized populations. Forests regulated climate. Oceans buffered temperature shifts. The biosphere was not static, but it was resilient. Humans did not evolve alongside these systems as equal participants. We emerged into them already formed. That distinction matters. Species that belong to an ecosystem are woven into it. Remove them, and the system strains. Introduce them suddenly, and the system destabilizes. Invasive species do not need malicious intent to cause collapse. They simply exploit niches faster than the system can respond. Humans fit this pattern uncomfortably well. When humans reached Australia, megafauna vanished within a few thousand years. When they entered the Americas, mammoths, giant sloths, and saber-toothed cats disappeared. These extinctions were not accidents. They were consequences of a species entering ecosystems that had never evolved defenses against it. Earth had not prepared for us. Even our relationship with fire, often framed as the defining human innovation, reveals our late arrival. Fire existed long before humans. Lightning ignited forests for hundreds of millions of years. Ecosystems adapted. But when humans learned to control fire, they wielded it not as a natural regulator, but as a tool of transformation. Landscapes burned faster, more frequently, and more selectively. The planet adapted again, but at a cost. The deeper you go into deep time, the clearer the pattern becomes. Earth does not require intelligence to thrive. It does not require consciousness. It does not.
Primates appeared late in this story. Hominins appeared later still. Anatomically modern humans arrived less than 300,000 years ago. In geological terms, we are barely here. If Earth's history were compressed into a single year, humans would appear in the final minutes of December 31st. Civilization would emerge in the last few seconds. Everything we consider foundational, language, culture, agriculture, technology, would be a flicker before midnight. And yet, in that flicker, we have altered planetary systems that endured for millions of years. This is not because we are uniquely powerful. It is because we arrived at the wrong time, or perhaps after the story was already written. Earth's ecosystems evolved in balance long before humans entered the scene. Predators and prey co-evolved. Feedback loops stabilized populations. Forests regulated climate. Oceans buffered temperature shifts. The biosphere was not static, but it was resilient. Humans did not evolve alongside these systems as equal participants. We emerged into them already formed. That distinction matters. Species that belong to an ecosystem are woven into it. Remove them, and the system strains. Introduce them suddenly, and the system destabilizes. Invasive species do not need malicious intent to cause collapse. They simply exploit niches faster than the system can respond. Humans fit this pattern uncomfortably well. When humans reached Australia, megafauna vanished within a few thousand years. When they entered the Americas, Mammoths, giant sloths, and saber-toothed cats disappeared. These extinctions were not accidents. They were consequences of a species entering ecosystems that had never evolved defenses against it. Earth had not prepared for us. Even our relationship with fire, often framed as the defining human innovation, reveals our late arrival. Fire existed long before humans. Lightning ignited forests for hundreds of millions of years. Ecosystems adapted. But when humans learned to control fire, they wielded it not as a natural regulator, but as a tool of transformation. Landscapes burned faster, more frequently, and more selectively. The planet adapted, again, but at a cost. The deeper you go into deep time, the clearer the pattern becomes. Earth does not require intelligence to thrive. It does not require consciousness. It does not require planning. For billions of years, life flourished without any species attempting to understand the whole. Human intelligence is not a culmination of Earth's trajectory. It is a deviation, and deviations are risky. Consider how quickly Earth stabilized after mass extinctions. After the Permian extinction wiped out over 90% of life, ecosystems recovered within tens of millions of years. That may sound long until you remember that Earth has time. Humans do not. We are adapted to short horizons, seasonal cycles, generational memory. We plan in decades because we cannot afford longer. Earth plans in epochs because it does not need to hurry. This mismatch creates tension. Humans arrived during a rare climatic calm known as the Holocene, a brief interglacial period of relative stability. Agriculture depended on it. Cities depended on it. Civilization is built on the assumption that this calm will continue. But the Holocene is not normal. For most of Earth's history, climate has been volatile. Ice sheets advanced and retreated. Sea levels rose and fell dramatically. Species migrated or died. Stability is the exception, not the rule. Humans evolved during an anomaly and mistook it for permanence. This is what it means to come too late. Not just late in time, but late in the planet's developmental arc. Earth had already found equilibrium without us. We did not contribute to that balance. We disrupted it. Not out of malice, but because our survival strategy depends on altering environments faster than biology can respond. And this brings us to a troubling realization. If humans were removed tomorrow, Earth would recover, forests would expand, oceans would rebalance, species would diversify. Within a few million years, nothing by geological standards, our presence would be reduced to a thin layer of sediment and trace isotopes. But if Earth were removed, humans would vanish instantly. That asymmetry matters. It suggests that humans are not foundational to this planet. We are not essential. We are contingent. A brief experiment layered atop systems that neither need nor depend on us, and perhaps that is why Earth resists us so consistently. Not as punishment, but as correction. A planet maintaining its own processes regardless of who occupies its surface. This perspective strips away comforting narratives of destiny and replaces them with something colder, but more honest. Humans are not the natural climax of Earth's story. We are a late addition, testing how far the system can bend before it reasserts itself. And systems always reassert themselves. This does not mean humans are doomed, but it does mean our presence here is not guaranteed. The planet has survived far worse disruptions than us, and it will survive us too. The question is not whether Earth can endure humans. It is whether humans can endure Earth, now that the brief window that allowed our rise is beginning to close. Because as the climate shifts and the ancient rhythms resume, another unsettling thought emerges. Perhaps the greatest mismatch between humans and Earth is not physical or ecological, but mental. Because while Earth moves forward without memory, humans cannot stop looking beyond it. Beyond this planet, beyond this time, beyond this life. And that restless gaze may reveal the final, most revealing clue of all. Long before humans tried to leave Earth physically, we left it mentally. The human body is anchored to this planet, but the human mind rarely is. It wanders, forward, backward, upward, outward. It imagines worlds that do not exist, futures that may never come, and meanings hidden behind the visible. No other species does this to the same degree. And that difference may be more revealing than our tools or our cities, because a mind perfectly suited to its environment does not constantly seek escape from it. Humans struggle with stillness. Silence makes us uneasy. Unstructured time becomes uncomfortable almost immediately. We fill the gaps with stories, plans, fears, hopes. Our thoughts rarely remain in the present moment for long. We replay what has already happened and rehearse what might happen next, often at the cost of what is happening now. This is not merely cultural, it is neurological. The human brain is wired for anticipation. Pattern recognition, prediction, and simulation dominate our mental landscape. These abilities were once survival advantages, imagining where prey might run, where danger might emerge. But over time, they expanded far beyond immediate necessity. The mind became a theater for possibilities, and possibilities have no natural limit. This expansion comes with a price. Anxiety is not an aberration in humans. It is a byproduct of imagination. Depression often emerges not from present suffering, but from perceived meaninglessness. Existential dread, fear of death, insignificance, isolation, has no clear evolutionary function. Yet it persists across cultures and eras. Earth does not require its inhabitants to ask why they exist. Humans cannot stop asking. Across history, this discomfort with the present world has produced remarkably consistent themes. Almost every culture imagines another place. Better, purer, truer, a heaven above, a golden age behind, a promised land ahead. Even in secular societies, the pattern remains. We dream of utopias, simulations, virtual realities, space colonies. The direction changes. The impulse does not. Early humans painted animals on cave walls not just to record, but to transcend. Myths placed gods in the sky, heroes among the stars, ancestors in realms beyond death. The earth beneath their feet was never the final destination. It was a stage. Religions formalized this intuition. Earth became a test, a trial, a temporary dwelling. Salvation lay elsewhere. Enlightenment meant release. Paradise was not here, it was beyond. These ideas emerged independently across continents, suggesting not cultural borrowing, but shared psychological structure. The human mind resists permanence. Even when life improves materially, dissatisfaction persists. Comfort does not quiet the restlessness. Wealth does not eliminate longing. Stability does not end the search for meaning. This is not ingratitude. It is misalignment. A species meant for its planet would feel complete within it. Instead, humans experience a persistent sense of absence. Something missing, something just out of reach. Philosophers have struggled to name it for millennia. Longing, angst, dukkha, sehnsucht, different words, same ache. This ache drives progress, but also suffering. We build civilizations not just to survive, but to justify existence. We accumulate knowledge not merely to understand the world, but to feel less lost within it. We explore not only to discover, but to escape the boundaries that feel imposed upon us. Space exploration is often framed as curiosity, but beneath that curiosity lies something deeper, a yearning that predates rockets. The stars have always pulled at the human imagination. Long before we knew what they were, we told stories about living among them. This is not normal animal behavior. Other species migrate when resources demand it. Humans dream of migrating even when resources are abundant. We fantasize about life elsewhere while standing in safety. The planet may sustain us, but it does not satisfy us.
Neuroscience offers partial explanations. The human default mode network, the brain system active during rest, constantly generates narratives about the self across time. It constructs identity, purpose, continuity. But this system is also linked to rumination and distress. The more developed it is, the more likely the mind is to suffer when reality fails to align with expectation. We are aware of our own temporality. Animals experience death. Humans anticipate it. This anticipation changes everything. It turns time into pressure. It turns life into a question that must be answered quickly. Earth, with its slow cycles and indifferent vastness, does not provide answers at human speed, so we invent them. Art, religion, philosophy, science, these are not luxuries. They are coping mechanisms for a mind that does not feel at home. They create frameworks that make existence bearable. Without them, the raw experience of being human on Earth can feel unbearable. This might explain why humans so often feel alienated even in environments engineered for comfort. Modern cities, climate-controlled and efficient, do not eliminate loneliness. Technology connects billions, yet isolation deepens. The mind continues to look elsewhere. Elsewhere is not always physical. Some retreat into inner worlds, dreams, imagination, altered states of consciousness. Others seek transcendence through meditation, psychedelics, or ritual. These experiences often carry a strikingly similar quality, a sense of returning to something familiar yet forgotten, a place that feels more real than reality. People struggle to articulate it, but they return changed. This suggests something profound. The human mind may be optimized not just to survive, but to imagine conditions beyond Earth's constraints: lower gravity, different time scales, expanded perception, states where the body's limits dissolve. If that sounds speculative, consider how poorly the human mind tolerates confinement. Prisons break people psychologically. Solitary confinement is considered torture. Even suburban monotony can induce despair. A mind that belongs fully to Earth would accept boundaries. Ours chafes against them. The cost of this restlessness is enormous. Mental illness is widespread. Burnout is common. Suicide remains a leading cause of death in many societies. These are not signs of individual weakness. They are symptoms of systemic mismatch, a species whose mind outpaced its environment. And yet, this same restlessness produced science, art, and empathy. It drove humans to question cruelty, imagine justice, and extend concern beyond immediate kin. It allowed us to conceive of planetary stewardship, even as we struggle to achieve it. So the mind is not a mistake, but it may be tuned for a different context, one where awareness is not a burden, where time is not scarce, where curiosity does not lead to existential pain, where intelligence is not constantly confronted by a universe that does not answer back. Earth is vast, but the human mind perceives something vaster still, and this creates tension, a consciousness capable of infinity, trapped in a body bound by gravity, decay, and death. A mind that dreams of eternity, housed in a world that measures existence in erosion and extinction. This tension has defined human history more than any war or invention. It is why we build monuments meant to outlast us, why we record stories to defy forgetting, why we search for signs of life beyond Earth with such urgency. The question, "Are we alone?" is not scientific curiosity alone. It is emotional longing. If there are others, then perhaps we are not misplaced. But what if the opposite is true? What if the reason humans feel so drawn to elsewhere is not because we will someday leave, but because we never fully arrived? That possibility lingers uncomfortably as the mind turns back toward the planet it inhabits. Because if our consciousness is not calibrated for Earth, the ways we survive here begin to look less like harmony and more like containment. And containment always comes at a
If the
cost.
human body is poorly matched to Earth, and the human mind constantly looks beyond it, then our greatest achievement, civilization, can be seen in a different light. Not as proof that we belong here, but as evidence of how much effort it takes for us to remain. Every major human invention is a buffer, Fire allowed us to eat foods our bodies could not digest raw, to survive temperatures our skin could not tolerate, to push predators back into the dark. Clothing replaced fur. Shelters replaced natural insulation. Agriculture replaced ecological integration. Medicine replaced resilience. Technology replaced adaptation. Each solution worked, and each came with a price. The agricultural revolution is often celebrated as progress, but it marked the beginning of a long negotiation with the planet, one in which humans demanded consistency from systems that had never offered it. Fields required predictable seasons. Crops required stable rainfall. Livestock required controlled landscapes. Earth provided none of these guarantees, so humans forced them. Forests were cleared, wetlands drained, rivers redirected, monocultures replaced ecosystems. For a time, yields increased, populations exploded, civilization seemed inevitable, but the cost was deferred, not eliminated. Soils depleted, pests adapted, diseases jumped species. The land grew less forgiving. Human bodies paid the price first. Early agriculturalists were shorter, sicker, and more disease-ridden than their hunter-gatherer ancestors. Diets narrowed, nutritional deficiencies spread, dental decay skyrocketed. Skeletons tell a story of stress and scarcity disguised as abundance. We stayed, but at a biological cost. As cities grew, the buffers multiplied. Walls against enemies, sewers against waste, aqueducts against thirst, laws against chaos. Each layer insulated humans further from direct contact with the planet and from each other. The more complex the system, the more fragile it became. Collapse did not require catastrophe, it required disruption. The industrial age intensified this pattern beyond anything Earth had experienced before. Fossil fuels unlocked energy stored over hundreds of millions of years and released it in centuries. Machines amplified human power, allowing us to reshape landscapes at planetary scale. For the first time, humans did not merely adapt to Earth, they overrode it. Cities expanded into deserts. Food was transported across oceans. Seasons became irrelevant indoors. Night was erased by artificial light. Humans created an artificial world layered atop the natural one, a controlled environment designed to support a species that could not otherwise survive at such scale. It worked, astonishingly well. Life expectancy rose, infant mortality fell, knowledge exploded. Billions lived lives their ancestors could not imagine. And yet, beneath the surface, the costs accumulated. Fossil fuel combustion altered atmospheric chemistry. Oceans absorbed heat and acidified. Glaciers retreated. Weather patterns destabilized. The systems humans depended on began to change faster than infrastructure could adapt. This was not Earth's revenge. It was Earth's response, a planet adjusting to new conditions without regard for who caused them. Modern humans often speak of saving the planet, but the phrase is misleading. Earth does not need saving. It has survived asteroid impacts, global volcanism, and ice ages. What is at risk is the narrow band of conditions that allow human civilization to function, and maintaining that band grows more expensive every year. Consider climate control. Air conditioning allows humans to inhabit regions that would otherwise be deadly. Heating allows survival through winters that would freeze us. These technologies consume enormous energy, much of it extracted from the planet itself. As temperatures rise, energy demand increases. As energy use increases, temperatures rise further. It is a feedback loop built on staying. Water tells a similar story. Aquifers depleted faster than they recharge. Rivers diverted before they reach the sea. Desalination plants built to compensate, at immense cost. Agriculture consumes the majority of fresh water on Earth, much of it to sustain crops ill-suited to their environments. We can make deserts bloom, but only temporarily. Disease, once kept in check by antibiotics and vaccines, evolves rapidly. Resistance spreads. New pathogens emerge as ecosystems shift and species are forced into closer contact. Medical systems grow more complex, more expensive, more fragile. Staying requires constant vigilance. Even the digital world, often imagined as weightless, rests on physical foundations. Data centers consume vast amounts of energy. Rare minerals are mined at environmental cost. Satellites orbit above a planet still governed by gravity and decay. There is no escape from physics. The more humans rely on buffers, the more catastrophic their failure becomes. Power outages turn cities into traps. Supply chain disruptions empty shelves in days. Extreme weather overwhelms systems designed for stability. This fragility is not accidental. It is the cost of maintaining an artificial equilibrium on a planet that resists stasis. And the psychological toll mirrors the physical one. Burnout, anxiety, and despair rise alongside technological complexity. Humans work longer hours in climate-controlled environments, disconnected from natural rhythms, to sustain systems that sustain them. The effort is constant. This raises an uncomfortable possibility. Perhaps civilization is not humanity's natural state, but an emergency measure, a vast collective survival mechanism deployed to compensate for a fundamental mismatch between species and planet, a life support system. Staying requires constant vigilance. Even the digital world, often imagined as weightless, rests on physical foundations. Data centers consume vast amounts of energy. Rare minerals are mined at environmental cost. Satellites orbit above a planet still governed by gravity and decay. There is no escape from physics. The more humans rely on buffers, the more catastrophic their failure becomes. Power outages turn cities into traps. Supply chain disruptions empty shelves in days. Extreme weather overwhelms systems designed for stability. This fragility is not accidental. It is the cost of maintaining an artificial equilibrium on a planet that resists stasis. And the psychological toll mirrors the physical one. Burnout, anxiety, and despair rise alongside technological complexity. Humans work longer hours in climate-controlled environments, disconnected from natural rhythms, to sustain systems that sustain them. The effort is constant. This raises an uncomfortable possibility. Perhaps civilization is not humanity's natural state, but an emergency measure, a vast collective survival mechanism deployed to compensate for a fundamental mismatch between species and planet, a life support system. Before humans had data, they had stories. And long before science tried to explain our place in the universe, mythology tried to endure it. These stories were not created to entertain. They were created to hold something unbearable, to give shape to a feeling that could not be named. That feeling was displacement. Across cultures that never met, separated by oceans and millennia, the same themes emerge with uncanny consistency. Humans are rarely described as native rulers of the world. More often, they are guests, servants, exiles, survivors of a fall. In the oldest known myths, humans do not begin in harmony with Earth. They lose it. The Sumerians spoke of a time before suffering, followed by divine withdrawal. The ancient Greeks told of a golden age that ended when humans grew restless. In the Hebrew tradition, humans are expelled from a garden that provided everything they needed. Indigenous Australian Dreamtime stories describe ancestral beings shaping the land before humans walk it. In Mesoamerican myths, earlier versions of humanity fail and are destroyed, replaced by something incomplete. These are not stories of triumph. They are stories of replacement. Flood myths are perhaps the most striking example. From Mesopotamia to India, from the Americas to Southeast Asia, cultures tell of a great cleansing, a world reset by water. The details differ. The message does not. Humanity is fragile. The earth endures. Survival depends not on dominance, but on alignment. Modern readers often interpret these myths as metaphors for local disasters, and they are, but they are also something else. They are psychological fossils, traces of a shared intuition that humans are temporary, conditional, and accountable to forces far older than themselves. Even gods in these stories are rarely benevolent stewards. They are distant, unpredictable, silent. They give no guarantees. They do not explain themselves. The silence matters. Humans ask for meaning. The universe does not respond. Myths filled that silence not with answers but with structure. They turned chaos into narrative. They transformed indifference into intention, not because it was accurate, but because it was survivable. When science arrived, it stripped away the characters but left the silence intact. The universe revealed by physics and biology is vast, ancient, and unconcerned. Earth does not speak. It does not justify itself. It does not mourn extinctions or celebrate innovation. It simply continues. This realization should have ended mythology. Instead, it intensified it. Modern myths wear different clothing. Progress, destiny, manifest futures, the belief that humans are meant to expand, to conquer, to spread consciousness across the cosmos. These are not scientific conclusions. They are stories, designed to make displacement feel purposeful. If we do not belong here, then perhaps we belong somewhere else. This narrative appears again and again in modern thought: space colonization as salvation, technological transcendence, uploading minds, escaping biology, leaving Earth behind as a stepping stone rather than a home. These ideas are framed as optimism, but optimism often hides anxiety. Why is a species so obsessed with leaving its birthplace? Other animals do not imagine escape. They migrate, adapt, or die. Humans plan for departure centuries in advance. We design ships for stars we may never reach. We search the skies for signs of life not only out of curiosity, but out of hope. Hope that we are not alone. Hope that somewhere, conditions exist where our minds and bodies would not feel so strained. Mythology encoded this hope in divine realms. Science encodes it in exoplanets. The impulse is the same. And beneath all of it lies a deeper silence. Archaeology has uncovered countless human stories, but none that suggest Earth ever needed us. No ancient inscription records the planet welcoming humanity. No fossil shows ecosystems evolving specifically in anticipation of our arrival. There is no evidence of preparation. The Earth does not remember us. This absence is unsettling. Humans crave recognition. We want to matter, to the universe, to history, to something larger than ourselves. Myths offered that recognition. They placed humans at the center of cosmic dramas. Science removes the stage. We are not central. We are not necessary. We are not guaranteed a future. This is not nihilism. It is clarity. And clarity reveals why myths persist even in rational societies. They are not about belief. They are about belonging. They reassure us that our suffering has context, that our restlessness has reason. Even stories of punishment or exile imply importance. If the gods notice you, you matter. Silence implies the opposite. Perhaps that is why the idea that Earth was never meant for humans feels so disturbing. It removes not just comfort, but significance. It suggests that our presence is incidental, that meaning must be constructed, not discovered. But there is another way to read the silence, not as rejection, but as neutrality. Earth does not speak because it does not need to. It does not assign purpose because purpose is not required for function. Humans, however, cannot live without purpose, and so we project it onto gods, onto destiny, onto the future. Myths were the first attempt. Technology was the second. Space may be the third. Each step pushes the question further away. If Earth does not explain itself and myths no longer suffice, humans are left with an uncomfortable responsibility: to decide what they are without validation from the planet that sustains them. This is where many civilizations faltered. When stories collapse, so does coherence. When meaning erodes, so does restraint. People consume more, dominate more, demand more, trying to fill the void. Earth responds the same way it always has. It remains silent. And in that silence, a final question takes shape. One that myths once softened, but modern reality now sharpens. If Earth was never meant for humans, then what exactly are we supposed to do now? Because there is nowhere left to pretend we came from, and nowhere else yet to go. If Earth was never meant for humans, then the question changes. It is no longer, why are we struggling? It becomes, how long can we remain? And more importantly, how should we remain? Because there is a quiet difference between belonging and being allowed. For most of human history, survival felt like proof of entitlement. We lived, therefore we must belong. We endured floods, famines, and cold. Therefore, the planet must be ours to inherit. Civilization reinforced that belief. Cities rose, borders formed, maps were drawn as if permanence could be declared into existence. But Earth never signed the agreement. It tolerated us. For a while. If you strip away myth, ideology, and optimism, what remains is a simple truth. Earth does not care whether humans stay or go. That indifference is not cruelty, it is scale. Planets do not operate on moral timelines. They operate on physics, chemistry, and probability. And probability has never favored permanence. The unsettling realization is this. Humans may be the first species intelligent enough to recognize that they are temporary, not just individually, but collectively. We sense it in our art, in our anxiety, in our obsession with legacy, in our fear of collapse. We know, on some level, that nothing we build is guaranteed to last. Civilizations fall, languages vanish, even species disappear. What makes humans different is that we see it coming. If Earth was never ours, then dominance was never the goal. It was a misunderstanding, a coping mechanism, an attempt to anchor ourselves in a world that never offered roots. Conquest felt like belonging. Ownership felt like security. But ownership is an illusion on a planet older than memory. The deeper implication is uncomfortable but clarifying. If we are not the intended rulers of Earth, then our role shifts, from masters to participants, from conquerors to caretakers, from heirs to guests. Guests do not reshape the house without consequence. Guests listen. This reframing does not diminish humanity. It humbles it. And humility may be the one adaptation we have not yet fully tried. Not technological humility, but existential humility. The acceptance that intelligence does not grant entitlement, only responsibility. For thousands of years, humans asked what Earth could give them. The future may depend on asking what Earth can tolerate, because the planet does not respond to declarations or intentions. It responds to pressure. Push too hard, and systems shift. Remove too much, and balances collapse. Delay too long, and recovery happens without us. Earth does not threaten extinction. It permits it. And that permission is already written into the history of life. This does not mean humanity's story must end in failure. But it does mean the ending is not guaranteed to be heroic. Survival will not come from more dominance, faster extraction, or louder ambition. Those strategies belong to a species convinced it owns the ground beneath its feet. We do not. If Earth was never meant for humans, then staying here requires something radically unfamiliar: restraint. Adaptation not through force, but through alignment. A willingness to live within limits rather than expand beyond them. This is not regression, it is maturity. The irony is that the same intelligence that destabilized Earth may be the only thing capable of preserving a place for us within it. Not by overpowering the planet, but by understanding it well enough to step back. That understanding comes with grief. Grief for the idea that humans are special in the way myths promised. Grief for destiny, for permanence, for cosmic validation. Letting go of those stories is painful because they made the struggle feel meaningful. But meaning does not vanish when illusion fades. It changes shape. Meaning can exist without ownership. Purpose can exist without permanence. A species does not need to be eternal to be significant. It only needs to choose what it does with the time it has. Earth has given us time. Time to observe. Time to understand. Time to decide whether we will be remembered as a brief disruption or as a species that learned just in time how to live without pretending it was in charge. Because perhaps the most human act is not conquest, but restraint, not expansion, but care, not escape, but accountability. If Earth was never ours, then the question is not how we claim it. The question is whether we can earn our place, knowing it may always be temporary. And that may be the hardest truth of all. Not that we were never meant to be here, but that being here was always conditional.